closed for 8 days, but thanks to our brave young men, they've managed to reopen in an orderly fashion. And praise be to God, everything is moving along smoothly.
And while residents stock up at the supermarket, the power vacuum that was left in the city is being filled. Local committees that are running towns and cities in the east of Libya have rallied behind a new leader, the former justice minister who resigned over the brutal repression.
What is happening in Libya is a popular revolution led by the youth, supported by the people against oppression and against a dictator who has led Libya with a singular point of view and with a vengeful attitude and bloodthirsty soul. Now we announce to the world that we intend to build a democratic nation with institutions that respect international obligations and treaties.
Libya relies on its oil fields. They're the mainstay of its economy. But now production appears to be grinding to a halt. This refinery is pumping 11,000 barrels a day, only 1/10 of what it would normally produce, according to the manager. The expatriate workers who used to man the plant have fled to escape the violence. Muammar Gaddafi's options are shrinking. Opposition forces continue to advance towards the capital, and the international community has imposed sanctions which further limit his room for manoeuvre. But the Libyan leader still shows no sign of being in the mood to surrender. Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera, Benghazi.
Well, as the pressure mounts, what are the options for the embattled Libyan leader? Lawrence Lee investigates.
So what next for Gaddafi? Assuming he will not go voluntarily, his next moves must surely be predicated on where he believes he still has support and to what extent he can block his opponents from marching against him. A look at Western Libya presents problems for both the opposition fighters and for Gaddafi. The coastal road from the east is blocked at Sirte, Gaddafi's hometown, which he still controls. It's not a big place, but the roads either side of it are said to be controlled by armed forces loyal to Gaddafi. As such, it presents the biggest obstacle to forces from the east moving on Tripoli. Yet west of Sirte and still east of Tripoli, the rebels are said to now hold Misurata. The town has been the scene of days of heavy fighting, with the city falling and then being counter-attacked by pro-Gaddafi forces. But he now seems to have lost the army and therefore the town. Just as significant is the town of Zawiya, just west of Tripoli. Geographically, it's crucial. Latest reports from the town of 200,000 say after days of heavy fighting, the rebels are in charge in the centre, but the pro-Gaddafi forces are surrounding it. It's hardly surprising Gaddafi wants it back. If the rebels do keep control, it would leave Tripoli in a pincer. So what of the situation in the capital? The most recent images from foreign media invited by the Gaddafis suggest hasty attempts to clean up the centre and an area around Gaddafi's stronghold still said to be under his control. But contrary to Gaddafi's claims, there's plenty of evidence to suggest that Tripoli is not stable, and some reports have suggested dozens killed in clashes. Scenes from some of the poor suburbs like Tajoura in eastern Tripoli seem to suggest the police have simply melted away. It all lends weight to reports from Tripoli that Gaddafi's forces have been trying to pay local men to take up arms against the insurgency. There's no question the ground upon which Gaddafi built his empire is slipping away. His military options look increasingly limited. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
Well, as the violence continues, foreign governments have continued to pull their citizens out of the country by whatever means possible. In a daring rescue, 2 German planes landed in secret and evacuated 132 people from the Libyan desert. It follows a covert mission by the British military to bring out 150 oil workers. Harry Smith has the details.
British oil workers arriving in Malta after being rescued in a military operation shrouded in secrecy. Details are still sketchy, but it's believed 2 British Air Force transport planes entered Libyan airspace without permission. The British refused to reveal exact locations, but it's believed an airfield at Nafura was used to rescue 150 stranded oil workers, who were then flown to safety in Malta.
There was scheduled to be 65, but in the end there was about 130 got on.
Really?
Yeah.
And
we were sitting in the aisles. It was very cramped, but we were just glad to be out of there and getting on the flight.
The British, along with other governments, have also sent warships to Tripoli and Benghazi in attempts to bring out their citizens. But it's thought more rescue missions will be needed to airlift hundreds more oil workers stranded in the south.
As I said, there's still people in the desert, so I can't say too much. I can't say where I came from, etc., etc. Because the guys down there are still doing an excellent job to gather all the guys together and get them evacuated.
The Foreign Office here in London has come in for severe criticism for what's perceived to be its slow response to the plight of Britons trapped in Libya. An official I spoke to a short time ago declined to comment on this latest rescue mission, but said they remain deeply concerned for the plight of other Britons trapped in remote areas of Libya. Harry Smith, Al Jazeera, London.
Well, the unrest is also continuing in many other parts of the Middle East. In Oman, at least 2 people were killed in clashes between protesters and security forces in the city of Sohar. Tear gas was also used on the demonstrators in the industrial city. 8 others were injured. Witnesses say at least 1,000 people had gathered to demand political reform. Well, earlier I spoke to Jackie Spinner, a journalist in Oman, who was in Sohar when the clashes took place.
So it's gotten a little quiet after the sun has gone down, and what we understand is that a delegation from the government has arrived in Sohar to try to meet with organizers and discuss their demands. But, you know, the situation was very tense throughout most of the day today. It morphed from a demonstration, which is what it started out yesterday, into a riot. Serious clashes between the police and the demonstrators this afternoon. And tell us more about the demonstrators' demands and the government response to them. They're after jobs, better salaries, and end to corruption? Yes, that's correct. Many of the university students in Sohar are concerned that when they graduate, they don't have jobs, even though there are companies in Sohar who are in a position to hire them. They don't think that they're getting enough work. And so that's where a lot of that discontent stems from. Like some of the other countries, a few of the other countries in the region, nobody in Oman is calling for a regime change. Everyone is very satisfied with the Sultan here, but they are concerned about some of the ministers, and they're concerned about jobs and inflation and economic issues that are keeping a lot of people down. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the loyalty to Sultan Qaboos. He has made some announcements, hasn't he, about an increase in monthly allowances for students. Has that gone down well or not had an effect? Well, it was just announced this morning, so I don't know if many of the protesters in Sohar even had time to digest that news. But he has been very responsive. There was a big demonstration in the capital here in Muscat last week, and immediately following that, he announced some of the concessions. So he appears to most Omanis to be dealing with the situation in a very proactive way. To Tunisia now, where the Prime Minister Mohamed Ghannouchi has announced he will step down. It comes after renewed street violence in the capital Tunis as protesters demanded his resignation. Former Foreign Minister Beji Caid Sebsi has been appointed in his place. He served under the previous independence president Habib Bourguiba. Nadim Baba reports.
A surprise statement as Tunisia's new Prime Minister addresses the nation.
At this critical moment, in order to maintain our national interest and to ensure that the state is up and running with all its institutions, I requested Mr. Beji Caid Sebsi to assume the office of Prime Minister, and he thankfully accepted this responsibility.
It came just hours after interim Premier Mohamed Ghannouchi unexpectedly stepped down.
I consider my resignation will provide a better atmosphere for the new era. I hope from the depth of my heart that God will bless Tunisia.
The move comes at a tense time for Tunisia. Sunday saw new clashes on the streets of the capital. Officials say at least 5 people have died during street protests since Friday. Mohamed Ghannouchi took over as premier on the 14th of January after President Ben Ali fled to Saudi Arabia following weeks of protests. Critics say that since the Jasmine Revolution, there's not been real reform.
They've made a start. Some things have changed. The departure of Mr. Ben Ali by itself really means nothing. You got rid of a symptom, a symbol. So now you're going to do the rest of the process, and that is where people like ourselves viewing it from the outside say, you know, where is it going? How will it get there? How long will that take? And how long will the people stay calm while waiting?
Mohamed Ghannouchi has repeated the government's pledge to hold elections by mid-July. But almost 200 people have been arrested over the weekend. It's not clear how far the new Prime Minister can quell the anger on the streets. Nadeem Barber, Al Jazeera.
Well, that crisis in Tunisia has claimed another victim. French Foreign Minister Michel Alliot-Marie has resigned after weeks of pressure over her links to the former President Ben Ali. Andrew Potter has this report.
A happy holiday in Tunisia for French Foreign Minister Michel Alliot-Marie. But the break she took in December and the last weeks of President Ben Ali's rule are unlikely to remain fond memories. Alliot-Marie's been forced to resign for this, the latest in a series of scandals she's been involved in. She's not the only French minister to take advantage of questionable free holidays. Prime Minister François Fillon took his family on a New Year's holiday to the Nile resort of Aswan, courtesy of Egypt's soon-to-be deposed President Hosni Mubarak. Alliot-Marie became pressured after it emerged she travelled to Tunisia on a private jet, owned by a businessman with alleged ties to Ben Ali, weeks before he was pushed from power. But with growing turmoil in the Middle East, the timing couldn't have been worse. Both politicians were hammered in the French press, which then took aim at an unpopular president.
It goes back a long time. It's not only Michel Alliot-Marie. The whole French foreign policy is in disarray, and we can date it to Nicolas Sarkozy's arrival to power.
Alliot-Marie is expected to be replaced by current Defence Minister Alain Juppé. He served as foreign minister before, in the mid-90s under Sarkozy's mentor Jacques Chirac. Sarkozy will be hoping the reshuffle will help stop the scandals which are severely damaging his chances of re-election next year. Andrew Potter, Al Jazeera.
The Prime Minister is promising to introduce new political reforms after the opposition threatened more demonstrations. It comes as supporters of King Abdullah held a show of solidarity in the capital Amman. The rally follows weeks of nationwide protest by the opposition. Its leaders say the country's pace of reform has been too slow. Aides for the Arab League Secretary General Amr Moussa confirm he intends to run for the Egyptian presidency. We'll have the latest from Cairo in a moment. Plus, churchgoers in New Zealand hold outdoor Sunday services as aftershocks threaten to flatten their places of worship.
Hello again. Brazil again is looking very, very wet at the moment. On the satellite picture, you can see this bright white cloud here that's all gradually making its way northwards, and it is making its way up towards parts of Venezuela and Colombia. Torrentially heavy downpours there, and another clump of cloud there making its way through parts of Peru. Now, many of these countries have already seen some flooding, and it looks like the wet weather will continue as we head through Monday. Heavy downpours again, particularly in the northeastern parts of Brazil here, but also the rain's now pepping up down towards Rio and Sao Paulo once more as well. For Buenos Aires, though, here it should be dry and pretty hot. Our temperatures making it up to around 30 degrees. As we head towards the southern parts of Africa, there's lots of wet weather here at the moment. Still very heavy downpours there across many parts of Madagascar. Then that crosses through parts of Mozambique and all the way across into Angola. Torrential downpours out of that. The heaviest are going to be here in the east. Further south, that's where it should be a lot drier and brighter. Durban there will get to around 28 degrees during the day, and that's 82 in Fahrenheit. Now here in Doha, there's been a fair amount of cloud, a couple of spots of rain recently, and it looks like it will still be a little bit grey at times on Monday. The cloud, though, does get thicker as it works its way eastwards, and it does turn to snow there over parts of northern India and Afghanistan.
The Golan Heights, one of the spoils of the 1967 war, home to 20,000 Israelis and source of 1/3 of all Israel's water. But what of the Syrians left behind? With families torn apart and all borders closed, they come to talk to their loved ones across the Shouting Valley. Across the Shouting Valley on Al Jazeera.